My name is Audrey King. I am the Elwood House Museum's Curator of Education and Interpretation. So for updates for the Elwood House, I have, like the History Center, the Elwood House is open by appointment, not the mansion itself. We're still not doing tours of the Elwood's mansion, but the visitor center where our galleries are is open by appointment. So actually, I can do a quick share screen here so you can see how to get in touch with us. Here we go. So that's the information here for making an appointment to go see the visitor center galleries. We have 3 galleries with history and some art and lots of good stuff. And we're in the middle of putting in one new exhibit right now about the start of NIU, which leads me to the next point. We've got some new and returning interns. Our intern Brienne started this 2 weeks ago, I think, and she's been working with us on some collections projects. And we also have a returning intern, Rick, who is working with our executive director, Brian, to put together that NIU exhibit. So that's going to be really exciting. I don't have a date for when that'll be open yet, but you can keep an eye on our social media to see when that will be. Am I still sharing my screen?
No.
Okay, good. Yay. And then the last thing is that even when the building's not open to tour, we still have the grounds open for you to visit and walk around. They're beautiful. Our Director of Visitor Services, Donna, has been hard at work weeding and planting and trying to keep the weeds under control, and she's doing a really good job. So I would definitely encourage anyone who wants to just take a walk around a beautiful park to come do that. So that's all I have.
Excellent. So I'm gonna, so Audrey's going to start us off and putting it's in a little bit of historical context today about sharing some events that were part of May Elwood's diary as it was connected to the Spanish flu in 1918. Then I'm going to share some of the examples of some really fabulous materials that have been submitted to the History Center. And then we have Sarah Kane from NIU. She is an assistant professor, curator and department head of Rare Books and Special Collections, and the interim director of the Regional History Center and University Archives. And we also have Kim Helsley, who is with the Sycamore Public Library and the adult service manager. So we're all going to share a little bit about our collection projects. And then if you have questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat bubble and we'll get to those at the end. And just to remind everyone that we are also recording this, so other people that couldn't join us today will be able to enjoy this program in the future. So I'm gonna check out our technology here. And all right, good. There we go, okay. And I'm sharing my screen, everyone can see this okay? Excellent. So our, oops, that's not letting me forward here. So there you go, okay. So I thought we'd just start with a few questions here in collecting history. Now, why should we collect, what should be collected, and what stories should be told? Why should we collect? Because that's what we do at historical organizations. We collect materials to help people in the future understand their past. What should be collected, though, is always something that I think people are surprised by our answer, because we really think important events are just as important as pieces from everyday life. And that's what I'm really excited about with the materials that have been submitted to our COVID collection, our COVID initiative, is that they are wonderful examples of daily life from ordinary people. And what stories should be told? Everyone's story should be told. And there are some hard stories that we're going to listen to today, but they're still part of the experience. And I think, especially these days, that we are becoming a little bit better at engaging in uncomfortable conversations. So we'll just kind of jump right in here. This was the first example that we got submitted. So I thought I'd start with this one. It was a DeKalb High School senior, and he says, "My experience from all this is summed up in one word: Disappointment. From being around a bunch of friends, studying in school, with teachers, with talking to teachers, staff, friends, to now it all being on computers. Not being able to leave the house and everything being canceled from school to prom to maybe graduation. The feeling of losing all the experience is terrible. And an experience that all high schoolers dream of walking to receive the diploma to the last dance. It's a day everyone has dreamed, just washed away by sickness. That's my experience as a high school senior. So we go from that to what we were able to pull from the DeKalb High School Facebook page. If my screen will let me move forward. Okay, let's see. I'm going to stop my screen sharing and start again and see if we can get this to work better. Sorry about that. Okay, oh, here we go. All right, so we have now from the class of 2020, DeKalb High School is holding a drive-through graduation ceremony on July 11th. Now, who would have thought that a drive-through graduation ceremony would have been anything that would ever happen? So not only is it the details that when it was held, that it was going to be filmed by OC Creative, but that it would also, you know, the details to ensure safety as well as the flow of traffic. We are limiting each graduate to a maximum of 2 cars, that there is an area for the parents to enter and exit, and then the time slots. So we did also do some research on our end that would complement or enhance some of the materials that were shared with us. This is a fun picture here. We've got help with homework from a student, and I just love that he's got, you know, he's sitting there right next to his dog. The next is from an 11-year-old boy from North Grove School. And he talks about how he's learning to cook with my family. I make lasagna and tacos. I no longer go to school and we have homework. I am fine with staying at home. I just miss my friends. And that's something we're going to see quite a few times in a lot of the materials that were submitted. I know I get to call and FaceTime them, but I just want to see them and have them over. Something that is new is using Zoom and Google Hangouts to see and talk to my teacher and friends through the computer. Another picture, and this one's from Malta, with a 2nd grader remote learning. And I'm pretty sure his regular school attire did not include pajamas, like you can see in this picture here. And then we have another student. He is 10 in 4th grade. I have been practicing a lot of basketball during COVID. I FaceTime my cousins every day. My family and I have gone on many bike rides. We have eaten a pizza every week. My favorite teacher during COVID has been my mom. I thought it would be my dad, but my mom was better, so I thought that was interesting. I'm sad because I haven't seen my friends in 2 months. I also miss playing sports. And then this part just kind of gets you in the heart. My neighbor made me a mask that I have to wear if I go anywhere, but I really don't go anywhere because I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
This is from a 5th grader at North School. Hashtag COVID-19 is taking over the world and making people ill. The government is shutting down all the schools because kids spread germs easily. Adults and kids are missing a lot of activities. The things I am missing are my teachers, playing with my friends and my family. I miss all the family dinners and playing card games. I also miss going to the grandparents and tubing with my family. I miss my family so much. Coronavirus has turned my life upside down. I miss my old life. So this is from a high school student, and she wrote a very thoughtful, long essay that is just wonderful. So it was hard to pull out, but I selected for today the beginning where she finds out that things are going to be shut down, and then how she ends and provides I think she's a sophomore, and just some amazing perspective from that perspective. I entered a writing contest as part of my creative writing final grade. Months went by with no response. I was so excited and scheduled, I was so excited I scheduled to read them on March 12th. I practiced in my classes. I was ready for people to hear my talent. March 10th was my 16th birthday. I got my license and enjoyed the day with my family and boyfriend. March 12th came around. We went to the Juried Arts High School art exhibition at Kishwaukee Community College. Everything went by fine. Then it was either later that night when I was home or the next day I found out that Kishwaukee Community College closed. It was surreal. I was just there. Everything was fine. I saw students hanging out and walking to class. It was Friday at school and everyone talked about how we could have 2 weeks of spring break because of COVID-19. I laughed about it and told my dad. He responded with, "You won't be going back until next year." Little did I know his statement would turn out to be correct, or that they would not be in school the coming fall. COVID-19 has changed me for the better. I doubt people share the same opinion, but it is true. I don't ignore texts from my friends anymore, as I had when I was able to see them every day. I don't waste any time I have with my friends. I do see either. My best friend who lives down the street, walk around the block, one of us on the sidewalk, the other walking near the curb in the road. Her laughs make me smile and cry. I cherish every moment I have because I never know if I'll have another chance for something simple like that. I am more grateful for what I have because of COVID-19. My father is considered essential. I am not a particular believer in God, but I believe that him going to work is a blessing. And then we flash forward to last month for the first day of school. And so we have these pictures from St. Mary's in DeKalb where they are having the in-person learning. And I think, this is just a lot going on in these pictures. You've got, the students in their masks here. You've got the temperatures being taken, and then you've got the blue marks on the sidewalk here to make sure that everyone's social distancing. And this was from an adult now that submitted his recollection here. I am a custodian at a local school, plus I work nights at a liquor store. Having school shut down in March is the oddest thing I can imagine. 20 years in school, and I've never seen anything like it. I had a student come to my office in early March and ask me if I had a mask he could use because he was afraid to be in class. So I thought that was really interesting, and how we've, from early March when we were told we didn't need a mask, that here he had a student asking already. At liquor store, I've seen people buying alcohol because 1, couldn't be home with the kids. 2, afraid liquor stores closed. 3, didn't want to be at home without alcohol. I don't worry working at school, but I do see liquor store. Many older people think it's a plot by government. I say many times I'm going to get this virus because of the sheer amount of people that need to be drunk. That's my story. Yeah, I mean, some of these are just, they're powerful. So this is from a parent. Again, this was a longer essay, but I just selected a few things to share. COVID-19 has turned our lives upside down. My children's child care center has closed for an undetermined amount of time, and I am fortunate enough to be able to work remotely. My husband, as one would assume, is still working 40+ hours a week outside our home. Each day I attempt to work from home while keeping my children alive at a minimum and engaged as much as possible with the videos and activities their teachers are sending me via an app, Microsoft Teams. It feels like a Herculean task. No one ever thinks that they'll live through a major historical event or that they'll realize that they are, but right now we do. Just like the September 11th attacks shaped my youth, this will shape my adulthood. I hope that future generations learn from the errors of our response to this and see how it has highlighted the wealth disparities in our country. I further hope we are able to fix those disparities before anything like this happens again. And she mentioned going to church via watching it on TV. So here's a picture of her son watching church. And she also talked about how much bread she had made. So we also have a picture of some of the bread that she had made during the COVID. Here I sit on my 35th birthday and 35 weeks pregnant, in tears. I'm not crying because I'm spending my birthday in quarantine. I'm crying because I spent so long trying to have a successful pregnancy. And now that I have one, I'm missing out. I'm missing out on normal. Normally, I'd be getting a baby shower, maternity clothes, choice of birth plan, family and friends visiting us, and meeting the baby and postpartum support. I don't get any of that. Social distancing means no decorating our church fellowship hall and having friends and family go, "Aw," over cute outfits and booties. Non-essential businesses were shut down, and so my photographer had to cancel our maternity session. She also canceled our newborn photo session because we can't risk exposure. I cannot have the doula we hired to get me through my first birth experience. These are moments I cannot reschedule, moments we cannot get back. We are bringing a child, our rainbow baby, into a pandemic world. It is not the world I imagined having a child in. I spent this entire pregnancy waiting for the other shoe to drop, but this was not the shoe I imagined. So again, just such a powerful story. But what I love about this is that she sent me some pictures. So this is the mother during her pregnancy, and then she followed up by sending me a picture of her newborn baby. So I just, again, that was just a wonderful story that she thankfully was able to share with us. I turn to some local businesses and some of the stories that we have from them. We'll be having some of the containers from Whiskey Acres added to our collection, but here are just some great photos. Here's a picture of a shirt that they were selling, a photo here of the sandwich board at their business and how we miss you, and some of the workers as well. Upstaging is another great example of how a business pivoted and really shifted their business strategy. I mean, they did lighting for concerts, and that was one of the, obviously nothing that we've been able to do since March. And so here we have some of the privacy dividers that they're making. We have pictures of the face shields that they are selling. Here's some Sycamore firefighters that are wearing them. And then they also worked with Banner Up, who made some of the stickers that are on the shields, and they're a business that's here in Sycamore. So this is an essay by a pet groomer. I am a small business owner. I have groomed the pets of DeKalb and the surrounding areas for over 17 years. Since the governor's shutdown of non-essential businesses, the Illinois Professional Pet Grooming Association spent over 10 days trying to define through the government offices if pet grooming was in fact essential or not, because many groomers were questioning our status. The reply was that we are not. Many of us have closed, but some salons are still defiant and refuse, even one particular nationwide corporation with a store in our town. I chose to close and protect my clients and myself from spreading this terrible virus. Most pet grooming salons are independently owned and operated, like myself, and have found themselves in the same uncharted territory as so many other types of businesses. I now have no income and no unemployment to fall back on. Sweet dreams. With this one, it's just, again, people wearing masks all the time now. It's something that, now it's the new normal. But it's amazing what we get used to after time here. Karen Grubbs sent us over 20 different pictures just documenting daily life. And again, these are signs that we're getting used to, the one-way signs in the grocery store, that it's, there's a governor's executive order requiring people to wear face coverings. Here is information, here's the line you have to form outside the store. Please remain 6 feet apart. The shortage of bread. I didn't get a toilet paper sign, so maybe if someone took a picture of, only one, roll of toilet or package of toilet paper, maybe you could share that with us. But again, these are signs that we still see in some of the stores, especially with the disinfectant wipes are still pretty hard to get a hold of. And then here's from another store, the stand here line in front. So you, again, case you're unclear about how far 6 feet is, here, those signs on with the sidewalk chalk were made to help people remember. And then again, another local business that just said, how much they miss their customers. Here we have a picture. This was from ABC Preschool. They had a teacher scavenger hunt. They had to go around. I think they had a map, and here were one of the teachers. Here is a thank you sign for the dedicated work for the Postal Service. And then down here we have a tent that was used for people to get tested. And this was sent, and I just, again, I'm so appreciative of people helping us document these stories. I mean, this isn't a rural road in Waterman, and it's just a sign to just thank you and stay safe. These are some other photos that were shared. This is people, again, lined up to get into a store. All you can see 6 feet apart. This is a front of St. Peter's Episcopal Church during Holy Week when all the churches were closed. But this was a nice sign that they had in front. And then again, just another sign from a business saying that face masks are required. Here's some examples of local restaurants pivoting. Again, in downtown Sycamore that these photos were shared. Their hashtag Sycamore Strong was part of the Chamber's response to the pandemic. And then here's the picnic tables in the middle of the street, as well as some sanitizer for people to use. Another personal reflection, as a world, we are experiencing a God moment. It is your moment to choose. My testimony by my own experience is that God loves us and is waiting for us to trust and love him. We will suffer, but God will restore. Life will be different, but we will be healed and whole again. Now this, I think, is one of the most powerful pieces that was submitted to us. So many of you may know Barry Schrader, and he recently passed away, if you didn't know Barry. And so this is a picture of him and his wife who both live at Oakcrest. And he wrote, "This shows how I am able to visit Kay in the Oakcrest Health Center, only through a glass partition and cell phones to communicate. This created a hardship and great stress for patients in the health center and family members who could no longer touch or embrace. This went on for months." So again, it breaks your heart reading some of these pieces. On a lighter note, we have a poem that somebody sent us. It's sometimes when we find there's nowhere to go, when we have to stay home and just lay low, we can decide when to rush and when to be slow, or simply to do nothing or go with the flow. But I'm finding I'm lucky I can shelter in place, clean my house slowly, give drawers extra space. I can do puzzles galore, Zoom with my friends, FaceTime with my kids, gifts I can send. I find comfort in knowing we are all in our places, keep washing our hands, keeping them off our faces, knowing our kids work from home, they don't get a pass, our grandkids are learning, just not in their class. The lessons we're learning are not from our books. The world keeps on turning, essential healthcare workers and cooks. Our stress levels are high, the unknown mixed with the known. No matter who we are, from our norm, we've been thrown. Teachers online, creating lessons on the spot. Parents working from home while teaching kids, it's a lot. No daycare, no breaks, 24/7 together or maybe alone. Thank the Lord for computers, iPads, and iPhones. It's so different than we planned, not at all what we thought, awaiting winter's end and the spring it had brought. But instead, we are here, following the plan they recommend, in hopes that this social distancing will soon end. We send you all love in the spirit of community, praying for health, healing, and lots of immunity. We are sheltering in place to limit the spread, but after it all, I can hug you, my friend. So I love too that this is, people express themselves in so many different ways. So I really appreciated the poem that was sent and shared. This is from Jeff Kiker. he has shared several of the executive office orders from the governor with us. And over here, you can see a stack of papers that, again, were shared during some of the legislative sessions. So this is a quote from his Facebook page here. At work on the floor of the Bank of Springfield Center, our home for legislative session this week. We're here instead of the Capitol building so that we can maintain adequate social distancing. Stay tuned for regular updates. And so that's a great picture of him with his face mask, and a local representative also, you know, again, sharing our local story, but at the state level too. So here we have a nonprofit that also kind of, you know, turning lemons into lemonade, was able to take advantage of the close during the shutdown. This is the DeKalb Area Women's Center. And this is a little bit from their newsletter. How about a new coat of paint for its 103rd anniversary? I'm not very good at Finnish, but Majeka is the Finnish word for lighthouse. And there it is at 1221 State Street, the beacon of the 3rd Ward. Cracked facade windows were replaced by O'Neill glass from Sandwich on a snowy February 26, 2020. An emergency patterned glass pane was donated by Cardinal Glass of DeKalb that day. As it turned out, the painting project meshed with COVID-19 restrictions and that the building had been closed to public events since Friday, March 13th. The trades had the okay to work, and the crew from C&J Painting Fuss of Hampshire was under 5 workers with ladders easily 6 feet apart to accommodate the scaffolding planks. Of course, the bucket on the Genie boom held only 1 painter. With intermittent days off during our rainy season this spring, the final brushwork was finished, very nice pun, on June 4th. And here's some pictures of the exterior and then some of the workers with their masks. So we didn't just have people sheltering in place, we also had the March 2020 flood. So we had someone that shared, this is a drone picture of the Sycamore Golf Course, as well as this is a picture also from the Sycamore Park District showing the area near the Kish River. And then we also have the Black Lives Matter protest. Here is a sign that was in front of a home in Sycamore. Here is Aldi with their windows boarded up when the protests were going on. And then here is a picture of an amazing turnout that was at the courthouse. Jameer Atkins shared some of these photos documenting the protest at the courthouse, which, as far as we can tell from some of our research, was the largest protest ever at the DeKalb County courthouse. This was her poster that she made and just recently dropped off at the History Center. And then here's a picture in front of the courthouse, as well as the group as they walked around the neighborhood there. So this is, again, just for you to think about what's next. The story's not over yet. So we'd love to include your photo, your story, or your object. So the next thing I'm going to do is apologize to Audrey, because I was supposed to start with her and then just jumped right in. So I am so sorry, Audrey, about that. If we were in person,
okay.
I should have said, excuse me, Michelle, it's my turn, but I didn't catch that. So
that's okay.
So I'm going to stop my share screen here and then send it over here to Audrey, and then we'll pick it back to Sarah.
Okay, great. That was so good. So good to see all the different things that are being collected in DeKalb County. I knew that you were doing that project, but just to see what all the different things are and hear those stories is really great. So I today am going to be sharing some things from the Elwood House Museum archives, and I'll bring up my PowerPoint here in a minute. But I think one of the themes that I've noticed throughout the year this year, and I think in any time of uncertainty like this, is this searching for context, because it's so comforting to look back at similar situations in history or in our own personal lives or family histories and see how people have made it through before, what their experience was like, and compare it to what we are doing today and get some comfort from that. So although COVID-19 is the first pandemic of this scale that any of us have been through, it's not the first one that we've been through as a country. And as you may be guessing, I'm talking about the flu pandemic of 1918. So I'm going to bring up my shared screen here. Okay. Here we go. So if you've been keeping up with the discourse surrounding COVID-19, it's likely that you already know quite a bit about the flu pandemic from 1918, also known as the Spanish flu. But today I'm not going to talk about any of the statistics, how the pandemic spread, the medical specifics, or any of that kind of thing. I'm not going to be comparing numbers of hospitalizations or deaths. Instead, I want to look at the pandemics through, or the 1918 pandemic, through the life and sharing some of the insights from May Elwood. First, I want to start by acknowledging that May Elwood did not represent every person living in DeKalb County in the early 1900s. She had a life of incredible privilege. She was from an incredibly wealthy family. She married into one, and she was white. She had several houses she could move around in the country if she wanted to go to a different place, and she had access to excellent medical care if she chose to take advantage of that. However, because the Elwood House Museum is an organization based on understanding the lives of and preserving the belongings of the Elwood family, we have this amazing treasure trove of resources at our disposal that we can use to understand the Elwood's experience of these different historical events. So maybe the most promising resource in times like these are May's diaries. I've got a picture of May Elwood here. She was alive from 1874 to 1964, so almost 100 years, 90 years. So May's diaries are what we're going to be using today. From the early 1900s to the 1960s, we have a series of line-a-day diaries where she made notes about the weather, daily activities, and sometimes bits about national or global events. I have a scanned copy of one of these diaries here. We're not going to be reading this whole thing, but just so you can get an idea of what these diaries actually look like. These are handwritten entries, only a few fragmented sentences each, and as you can see, they can be pretty difficult to read, especially in the center section here where it is very light. It can be pretty difficult. You have to get used to learning what May's handwriting was and how she noted different things. A selection of the diaries have been read and transcribed and entered into the computer system so that we can search them easily. But unfortunately for me, not for the years 1916 to 1920, which is the diary you're looking at right now. So what I have done is I've searched through this diary. I've read all of the entries for 1917 and 1918, and I've looked at some of 1919 as well. And I've looked for any reference to the pandemic. And I've also looked for just day-to-day activities. So what were the Elwoods doing? Did they go to visit friends and family? Did they go on vacation? Did the kids go to school? Did the family go to church? That kind of thing. So before we get started, I also want to acknowledge the limitations of looking at May's diaries as a window into her experience of the pandemic. The pandemic lasted approximately 2 years, from February 1918 to April 1920. In the nearly 800 days in between, I was able to find exactly 4 references to the pandemic, and all of those were in the fall and winter of 1918. If you compare that to the roughly 274 mentions that were in the Daily Chronicle during that same time period, it might look like May just didn't care or that it wasn't on her mind. But I would really hesitate to draw that conclusion about May and her feelings about the pandemic because of how limited all of her entries are. If you've been looking at the ones on this page right now, you might, see some of this that I'm talking about. Even her diary is treated more like a captain's log of her activities for the day, more than it is a place to share her innermost thoughts and feelings. And even the most monumental events in May's life sometimes don't show up in the diaries, or they come up in a really weird way. So for example, May Elwood was pregnant during the fall and winter of 1918 when the pandemic was at its worst in the United States. And you would think that she might share some kind of tidbit about how she was nervous about bringing new life into the world at the start of a pandemic, or maybe she felt like she was missing out on something, like we heard from that, it's not a diary entry, the submission to the DeKalb County History Center's archives. But not only do we not get anything like that, but May doesn't even mention that she's pregnant until the day her son is born in June of 1919. So it is really limited what we can learn, and so we do have to read between the lines and do some sleuthing. So, and there's a ton of blank space that we probably will just never be able to fill in. So with all that being said, I think it's still really worthwhile to take what we can from one personal, if limited, account. So today what I'll be presenting is a sort of cross-check. I'll be pulling some of the samples of May's diaries and then referencing the Sycamore True Republican and the DeKalb Daily Chronicle from the same days for a broader perspective. So let's get started with the newspapers. The Spanish flu was first reported among military personnel in the spring of 1918, and DeKalb's newspapers first started reporting on it locally in September. On September 25th, 1918, the True Republican printed in its section dedicated to the local goings-on that residents Mrs. Morris and her daughter, Mrs. Vardy, were back from visiting a family member who was ill with the Spanish flu. The Daily Chronicle's first article was in July, just a 2-sentence piece about the flu's prevalence in Germany with the kind of mean headline, "Wish it was typhoid fever or even worse." Again, by September, they were reporting that the flu had spread to the Great Lakes region. In our collection, the first diary entry that I found seemed to track with the same timeline. It was also from September 1918, dated the 9th. It reads, "Schools closed on account of INFPAR and scarlet fever. Children home all day." So at first, I initially read the abbreviation as PAN instead of PAR and thought that it meant influenza pandemic. So I turned to the newspaper to see if I could confirm the school closing, and I found this article, which says schools will not be open, and then in the red I have circled there cases of infantile paralysis. So it was not the influenza pandemic that was closing the schools in the middle of 1918, the fall, summer to fall of 1918. It was what we know as polio. This is not what I was looking for. I was looking for the pandemic, but I think that it's still really important to include because it shows how stressful of a year the pandemic, or the flu pandemic fell into. In 1918, they were worried not only about staying home because of the spread of this new virus, it was also polio that was keeping kids at home and out of school. Another article from the Chronicle from September 20th, 1918 reported that children from multiple families across different parts of town had been seen playing together in an empty lot. And in the article, it encouraged parents to keep their children at home and not allow them to be in contact with any other kids. So it's an early example of social distancing, I guess. They had the same concept without the same language. That quarantine was relatively short-lived, and on October 7th, May noted that the kids, meaning her son IL and daughter Patty, were back in school again. Just 1 week later, we see the actual first mention of influenza in the diaries. On October 14th, 1918, May wrote, "Played golf, taught at Red Cross, much talk of Spanish flu." May was a volunteer at the Red Cross during World War I, making bandages and other medical supplies, as well as training and teaching courses. So I've got a picture of May in the mansion here, wearing her Red Cross uniform. From what the newspapers were saying, there were a handful of cases in our community, but a lot of the talk that May's talking about in this entry here likely still centered on foreign countries and stateside military training camps, the closest of which was Camp Grant, an Army facility in Rockford. As the number of cases continued to rise, both the True Republican and the Daily Chronicle published notices about how to avoid getting sick and what to do if you had symptoms. a lot of that information is the same as what we're hearing today. Try to avoid getting too close to people. Don't go out if you feel sick. And washing your hands definitely is one of the things that you see. In the fall is when we start to also see enterprising companies start to buy ad space, selling dubious medical remedies like Taxacold and Peruna, which is the ad you see here, as well as sanitizers for the home. On October 21st, a son of some of the Elwood's family friends, Bruce Lundberg, returned from Camp Grant that I just mentioned, sick with the Spanish flu. May was apparently not too worried about picking it up because the next day she went to visit Bruce and his family. Later diaries continue to include Bruce even years later, so we know that he survived, but we don't know the timeline of when. And there's a picture of Bruce there on the left. The very last time that May mentions the Spanish flu in her diary was on November 3rd, 1918, when she says, churches are open. Oh, this entry is from when she went to go visit them. Oh, no, here it is. Churches open again, closed on account of influenza. May was super involved in the Church of Christ Scientist here in DeKalb, so having that church closed was a real interruption to her daily life. It looks like from other newspapers in the area that closures lasted about 3 weeks. The article mentions schools, pool halls, and other businesses being closed down as well. Looking back at the 1918 pandemic, we know that the fall and winter of 1918 was when the United States was hardest hit. Fortunately for people like the Elwoods, a lot of their social activities were already winding down for the year. May was an avid golfer. She went golfing almost every day, definitely every week during the summer, and she kept doing that through October until the weather got too cold. But really in the winter, their only activities were church and visiting friends. And they did continue to have people over at their home, but things like the church closures would have really affected their way of life as they knew it. The Elwoods, it looks like by the springtime, they seemed to transition easily into a lifestyle that was very similar to the one that they had pre-pandemic. So I'm gonna exit out of here. The takeaway that I got from this was that, 1918 and 2020 are not a one-to-one comparison by any means. The viruses are different, our understanding of medicine is different, our avenues of receiving updates and sharing information are different. But for me, it's interesting to see the parallels in the way that the initial information spread from the way it started with, here's something that's happening far away, isn't that interesting, to I guess it's getting a little closer. Should we worry about it? Or to it's nearby, but we're still okay. To I guess we need to shut everything down. This is pretty bad. It also makes me think about what resources our ancestors or historians in the future are going to have to think about the way that we understood the pandemic today. So things like Michelle is collecting at the History Center, those stories and the pictures and the artwork that people are making. So I think my takeaway from reading May's diaries and comparing it to the newspapers is, if you're someone who has a talent for writing or art or music, do whatever you can to make something that shares your experience, because it's these human stories that really help us get through these times, and they're interesting to understand what it was like. So that's all I have. That's all I have for us.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful to see. I also love those pictures too. Thank you for adding those.
Of course.
All right. So Sarah, we're going to turn it over to you now.
Okay. All right. I dropped a link in the chat for those who are interested in participating in the project that I'm going to speak to at NIU. Turn my video on here. You can see me. Okay, and then I'm going to attempt to share my screen to make sure. Let's see. And I want to verify that everybody sees that. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, I'm going to speak to NIU's project about archiving the impact of COVID-19 and the Northern Illinois communities. And what I mean by that is basically the communities that are from I-80 and up, excluding Cook County. So if you know of people who are interested in participating and submitting materials, we'd be more than happy to have them. Feel free to share that link that I sent. That will take you directly to the welcome page, which explains a little bit about our project that I'll speak to in this presentation. So just like previous historically significant pandemics, such as the Spanish flu in 1918 or the polio outbreak in the 1950s, the COVID-19 pandemic will be studied by historians for decades. The Regional History Center and University Archives at Northern Illinois University is asking Northern Illinois community members to share their experiences about how they have been impacted by COVID-19. We want to preserve your stories, experiences, and thoughts during this unprecedented time for future generations. Archiving local stories, I think I skipped a slide here, sorry. Archiving local stories, oral histories, photos, and memories to create a historical snapshot of an unprecedented moment in Northern Illinois' history will help future generations remember what this moment in time looked like, the good, the scary, and the hopeful and the painful. We want you to know about the impacts on your life, both the positive and the difficulties that you have faced during this crisis. You have complete creative freedom on how you tell your story. We are collecting both digital and physical items, with the only caveat being that we are not accepting large format items. If you wish to have large format items represented in your submission, we ask that you take an image of it and submit it that way. What I really want to stress here is that all accounts are important. There is nothing too small or inconsequential to submit. We do not know what the researchers of tomorrow will be looking to uncover. Maybe what you think is insignificant today will have a whole other meaning in the future after we have time to process what it truly meant to live amidst this pandemic. We have all been affected by the pandemic differently, and this is your chance to help tell the story of the coronavirus pandemic in Northern Illinois to future researchers, however you see fit. So my goal with the next several slides is to speak to the ways in which you can share your stories. I thought the best approach would be to provide you with examples of things that have been submitted through the NIU project. These are by no means a limit to what you can submit, so please, again, use creative freedom when you donate materials. So one way to submit our stories can be told through personal accounts, which include journals, diaries, and reflections on how people's lives can be impacted by current events. Subjects can range from impacts on employment, leisure, education, business, relationships, mental and physical health, or social, civic, and religious activities. If you're more comfortable with prompts, then we have a questionnaire that we would be happy to, for you to participate in. In the slide, you will actually see some of the responses to the questionnaire that we sent out to NIU staff, faculty, students, and alumni. So another way is expression through creative works. Creative works can be narratives or poems that can be written or spoken. And we are also accepting artworks of any medium as well. So the example here is a student who was just doodling, trying to get out thoughts. And they mentioned how they were kind of anxious and stressed and they weren't really sure how to process it. And I think that this creative process and then drawing out their feelings, and you can see some words here, was a way to internalize what was going on. Photographs are also a great way to document the current situation. Photographs document the effects of social distancing, protests, civic engagement, shortages of supplies. They can document healthcare workers, social media campaigns to boost community spirits, such as teddy bears in windows or chalk drawings on sidewalks, which is an example you see here. And empty sports arenas, churches, movie theaters, and other places for gathering. Aside from photos, audiovisual materials in general are a great way to capture what it's like to live during this time. AV materials can document the personal and economic impacts that may include images and or sound, and can be sound or film. These include snapshots of posts on social media or videos of life out in supermarkets, people doing curbside pickups, or downtowns with no one around. Ephemera or miscellaneous printed materials are also important, and they do serve a purpose in the archive. Ephemera such as signage about store closures or shortages of supplies, documents received by mail that relate to current events, modified takeout menus, lesson planning, especially now that everybody seems to be doing e-learning. Changes in store ads and return policies are very popular. Event announcements, programs, invitations, the list kind of goes on and on, but these are all within the scope of the project, and we would love to see these things come in. Though I've already covered AV materials in general, I wanted to highlight audio and visual accounts and their importance in providing personal firsthand accounts. Short audio or video accounts capture candid responses to a topic. Accounts can be self-captured or can consist of 2 or more individuals speaking about topics that are most significant to them during this time of crisis. Researchers find accounts useful as they often provide viewpoints and capture situation or material that would otherwise be left out of the record. The intent with this clip is to share with you, if I can play it, a 2-minute video about an NIU student who submitted a really touching video, and I really wanted to share this so you could kind of be the judge on whether we should be preserving these things for future generations.
Barren Times Square in the city of New York under a state of emergency. This was another record day in our country. Just today, more than 25,000 new cases, approaching 1,000 new deaths in the space of one day.
Hi, my name is Pasha. Due to the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, people are ordered to stay at home. Everything is closed. Restaurants, gyms, schools. This is my room, where I'm spending my quarantine. I've stayed here for the past 3 weeks, and will remain in these 4 walls for another month. This is me, and I like to stay on my phone, because I can talk to my friends and look at funny pictures of cats. I used to go outside with friends all the time, spend time with my loved one, go frisbee golfing. I miss my friends and the fun we used to have outside. We aren't even allowed to go out unless it's absolutely necessary, such as medical emergencies and food needs. I used to go to the gym a lot, but now I have to try working out at home. I have to get a bit creative here sometimes. After working out, I like eating pizza, all alone though. Luckily, I get to watch funny YouTube videos. Oh, that pizza tasted great, by the way. I also have a lot of free time to work on more videos. That's for work though. So I guess you can say I work more. Not a bad thing, I guess. But of course, I let myself relax quite often, and I like to play games online with my friends. We usually have a blast. I like the way my keyboard clicks, and sometimes I type out whatever comes to mind. Then I look at it with a serious face to pretend that what I typed is very important. Then I get extremely bored. Oh, did I tell you? I got so bored that I started learning Chinese. Sing. How? Wanna sing how? Anyways, I really hope this pandemic passes soon and we can get back to our normal lives.
So I just wanted to conclude this section by saying that the accounts of daily life are some of the most requested items in the center. However, most people never capture that information because they never thought that such a snapshot would be of interest. So we have very few records about daily lives in the archives. When something is normal, it is seen as uninteresting and not worthy of recording. If these times have taught us anything, it is that normal is not given attention until it is too late to document. If I have any advice to give, if I have any advice to give, it would be to consider this when you submit your responses to the project. So again, these things are kind of just to get the creative juices flowing, to kind of show some of the items that we have through the NIU project. So now are you finally eager and want to submit to our project? If so, the URL I provided at the top of the slide, I provided it in the chat as well, and that will take you directly to the welcome page of the project for the NIU communities. You can submit your digital documents by collecting the Submit Your Story at the top of the page. And then if you're interested in doing more of a prompt-based response, you're welcome to fill out the questionnaire. So there is also information about how to submit physical items, whether they be paper materials or artifacts to the collection. Please note that we accept donations by mail. We're not accepting drop-offs at this time, and that anything that comes in physically, you will have to fill out a deed of gift. Where to mail items as well as a deed of gift is found on that welcome page a little farther down, which is shown on this slide here, is the welcome page. And then some of you may be wondering how things are accessed or what happens after you donate or submit materials. Digital items are reviewed and then approved by staff and will become available at this homepage presented here on this slide once they are processed. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. If you are donating physical objects, that will take a bit of time. And then just like the digital collection, those will become available once they're processed. And the way to access those will be through the reading room in the Founders Memorial Library up on the 4th floor. And here is the contact page. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out by email. You can also submit items by mail with caveat that the department isn't currently staffed. A lot of staff are working remotely, and then our webpage there is at the bottom. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out, and I would be happy to answer them. Okay, I am going to attempt to pass it back off.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah, and that video was so powerful. Wow, what a great story and what a talented young man that he could put that together. So that was great. All right, last but not least, we're going to turn it over to Kim with the Sycamore Public Library.
Hello, let me see if I can share my screen here. Maybe not. I've got two computers here, so what I attempted to do earlier today might not be working. So let's take a look here.
We can see this one.
Hey, yay, how's that?
Excellent.
Perfect. So I'm going to start briefly by just explaining where the library is at right now. We opened up on July 13th. We started in June with curbside assistance, and we just had designated parking spots in the parking lot for people to pull up, reserve materials online, and then we would deliver them to them outside with staff members who were masked and gloved. And we just popped open trunks and distributed materials that way. But on the 13th of July, we decided to open up to the public, but there are some changes, as there are anywhere else out in the community. We've limited browsing to 1 hour. Computer time is also for 1 hour. Everything is stationed 6 feet apart. We've got spaces that are available to check out as far as tables are concerned for folks who might need to do some more in-depth studying. We've got tutor spaces that are for checkout as well. And again, those are kind of on a case-by-case basis. So really the whole community center feel of the Sycamore Library has changed drastically over the last several months. And we are welcoming back the community members in droves. They're very excited that we're available. But it's very different. And the data that keeps coming in about the safety of circulating materials and how we process that is changing every day. It seems like week to week we get some new information, but we are on top of it all and keeping our first and foremost priority is to keep the staff and the community safe as we navigate these interesting times. Our hours are from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, but we do keep the first hour of the day, so from 9 until 10 a.m. for vulnerable patrons. And so that's a little bit about where the library is at right now. I did want to kind of piggyback on what everybody has said today, Michelle, Audrey, Sarah, why we should collect these types of materials and these experiences, right? It's a very unique moment in time, and it's a major historical event. And so to have these types of perspectives is going to be very important as we research this time period for decades, if not longer. As a previous historian and a graduate of NIU, I know how important it is and unique it will be to have this kind of documentation. That video clip was phenomenal. And so things like that are really going to be important in capturing what's happening. The library has received very few submissions. We attempted to get folks to contribute to their story, to contribute to the archive project with their stories through our summer reading program. But I actually received a submission overnight last night. It was our first major submission. So it's not part of my slides, but I will definitely share that with you as I work through the slideshow and show you how you can contribute at the Sycamore Library website. And then I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing personally as far as capturing the experience that the library has had and the staff here and some of our patrons who have just verbally shared their experience. So let's get started with the slides. So on our website, you will be able to, there's a slider on the website that says, be a part of our history. And so as you see here, we're looking for stories that speak to your life and community during the pandemic. Much like Michelle and Sarah both contributed, we're looking for anything from letters, photos, sketches, songs, any sort of documentation, and anything that will capture what you are feeling in this moment, what folks are feeling in this moment. It will be very unique because one story is very different than the next. But like everyone else today has shared, we feel that all stories are important and that everybody should have a voice and in sharing their COVID-19 experience. We also were really felt it was important to note that the community, the Sycamore community as a whole, and I think I can speak for DeKalb County as well, we really feel like we're all in this together. And so I was grateful to be included as part of the project with both Michelle and with Sarah so that we could work with other communities, not just DeKalb and Sycamore, to try to capture what's been happening in this part of the world. So we want to hear the stories of the 2020 pandemic. So whether you're working, whether people are quarantining, working in the medical field, homeschooling, adjusting their business models, as I said before, all stories are unique and valuable. And so then there's a list there of how we are accepting materials, preferably digital. So it could be writings, photos, drawings, photographs, videos, and music. This last slide here is just a glimpse of what the website looks like as far as contributing the form that we have you fill out that eventually gets sent to me. So you can just simply type in your name, your email. You can submit a file if you have something that's already been created, videos, images, things like that, or you can just write directly into the form, and then that will go straight to the library here, and the staff will be able to decipher what gets shared with the overall archive project. But again, I will share with you a story that came through overnight, and it was about a family who multi-family members. There was a person whose wife was put on, she ended up taking the COVID Family Cares Act and was able to stay home with their now almost 2-year-old. And what had happened was their daycare that they had previously is no longer available. And so in reaching out to other family members, they realized that they only had a couple of options. And so, excuse me, they ended up using their nephews who were teens, and at the time, because it was over summer break, were able to do some Red Cross babysitting training and go help out in their time of need and watch their daughter. The interesting part of this story, though, comes to now, and with the start of the school year. So these folks live in DeKalb, and there are a couple of siblings that are all in the DeKalb High School. And the family ended up withdrawing one of the sons from school because the Family Cares Act ended up being up there. They got so many weeks of care and assistance so that they could stay home, but they had to go back to work. And so one of the students, the family ended up withdrawing one of the children, one of the teen boys, so that they could watch their cousin. And so he's doing an online homeschool instead of attending the DeKalb High School, which is a live synchronous class setting. And so I just, that story really touched me, and I felt like it was really unique, the length that this family was going to help out some other family members who really didn't have any other options. So it's stories like that we're hoping to capture. There was a lot of great content that we saw here today. And one of the things that I'm hoping to do too is to go around and get some staff perspectives here so that we can, as a community center, as a very vibrant community hub, if you will, what this has been like for the people who work here and their families, and ultimately the people that we serve. And so you can go to our website. You'll see at the top of that slide, sycamorelibrary.org. You'll see this slide instantly on the webpage. You can always email me directly, though, at kimh@sycamorelibrary.org, and I can answer any questions or take any submissions via email as well. So thanks. I will turn this back over to Michelle.
All right, thank you. Wonderful job, and I'm so glad that you got that fantastic story. Again, I just really appreciate people sharing such personal experiences. And I think one of the challenges now too is we're kind of in the routine of the new normal. I know I started by keeping a journal when this started going on, and I don't think I've written it in a month because we're just kind of getting into this new routine that still seems surreal, but it's all important. So please consider in participating in one of these collecting projects. We are not in competition with each other. We are collaborating with each other. So whatever is a good fit for you works for all of us. So if anyone has any questions, we can unmute people, or you can drop something in the chat box. Don't see any here, but we are also always available either at the DeKalb County History Center, the NIU Regional History Center, as well as the Sycamore Public Library. This program was recorded, so if you know someone that might find this topic of interest, please share it with them. And if anyone has any questions about contacting someone here, please let me know as well, and I can share that with you. But thank you all. Oh, we've got one thing in the chat. Oh, Kimberly put her email address in there, or a link to the Sycamore Library, and also Sarah has a link to the NIU homepage. So is there anything anyone else wanted to add? Okay, well, thank you all so much. I enjoyed learning about the other projects that are going on here in the area. And Audrey, thank you for putting this in historical perspective. And I hope to see you all again in October, where we'll give you a sneak preview of our first ever virtual house walk. So thanks again.